little bit like dieting. You say dieting is like planting in a restrained manner. You can do it for so long, and then suddenly you've just got to just let yourself have the weekend off. It's just a glass tank with no filter. There's so many plants, and they flower, and they do all the exciting things that our garden plants do, but it's year round. You don't get rained on, and you can do it in a tiny little space.
I love Stipa tenuissima. I mean, as long as it doesn't look too much like it's escaped Donald Trump's head, I'm quite happy to have. Quite happy to have.
I'll never look at it the same again, though. Hilarious.
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Talking Dirty over at East Ruston Old Vicarage. Looking very sophisticated today is Alan Edward Herbert Gray. How the devil are you?
The devil in me is very well, in actual fact. And over in Cambridgeshire, we have Thordis Maria Sophia Friedrichsen, looking absolutely fabulous with her navy blue jumper scattered with rainbows.
Little rainbows, to add as much colour as possible to this episode, but I didn't need to try because looking marvellous in mustard and with an awful lot of seasonal show and tell is Ian Scott Roofe, the plant doctor himself, our Get Gardening co-conspirator. Hello.
Hello team, how are we?
Very good, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks, very well.
Good.
Yep, nice to be here again. Thanks for having me along. I really appreciate you having me back.
Well, we wanted to have you back because this is your favourite season. So we wanted to kind of celebrate that as much as possible. And true to it being your favourite season, look at all of this marvellous plant material that you've brought along for show and tell.
Well, I brought some bits. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was doing show and tell, but I did bring some bits anyway, just in case. So I have brought a few things that I think are really particularly nice for this time of year as well, because we are slowly reaching the end of autumn and we'll soon be into winter, of course. There's a few things that are still performing quite nicely. But yeah, when you want me to do some show and tell, you let me know.
No, right now. Bring it on.
Oh, right
I want to start getting into this wonderful vase of material you've brought.
Okay. Well, I brought some grasses. I bought a particular grass and it's lost a bit of its leaf, but it's a really lovely Miscanthus. And it's a Miscanthus called Goliath, and it's growing for me in my very poor soil at mum and dad's at about sort of 8 feet. And the reason I bought Goliath was not just for the height, it was because for these lovely seed heads, which are fantastic on all the Miscanthus, but also, and I think I've still got some in here, is the amazing autumn colour. Its foliage is just wonderful. It turns fiery pinks and oranges, yellows, and all sorts of lovely, really hot colours in there. So you get this huge plant and it turns into this fiery inferno from now until it collapses to the ground in about a month's time. And it really is a fantastic thing, but yet alone for these seed heads, absolutely lovely. I love the Miscanthus as a group of grasses, don't you? And I think it really is so versatile in terms of all its garden uses, from low hummocks to actual sort of seasonal hedging almost.
I was just going to say there is a delightful little dumpling of a darling, which is dwarf, which I think is called Yakushima Dwarf or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is lovely, but lots of them have that lovely ability to fire up in the autumn, and they go what I would call sort of flamingo colours, kind of pinks with hints of orange in it, and going out to golds and yellows. But one thing you reminded me of, Ian, just by showing those Miscanthus flowers, was the fact that I picked some and I brought them indoors and put them in a flower arrangement a few years ago now. And I walked into the room and there's all this sort of fluff everywhere, and I thought, oh my goodness, what on earth is this? Well, it was Miscanthus casting her seeds around in every little piece of draft. And of course, what I suddenly realized is I should have sprayed her with hairspray to set the seed heads.
That is a real top tip, actually, because I know Ian, in the past, when he's brought plant material in to talk about when we've done radio programmes, has then kindly let me take it home. And if you don't do that, you're right, you can find those grass seeds travelling around your house. Trying to make your home their home. You said that was about 8 foot tall. How broad is the clump?
Well, it's been in at my folks' garden for about 10 years now, and it's no more than about 2.5 feet across at the ground. I've never split it, haven't done anything with it, and the soil is not too bad. But I think if Alan was growing it in particular, it'd probably get a lot bigger in all directions because his soil's much richer. But it's just a lovely grass. It really, really is. And I'm a big fan of them at this time of year in particular.
And also from our podcast last week with Tamara, where Alan kind of threw his favour behind statuesque grasses and made it clear that little wispy grasses that look like wigs were not his favourite. An 8-foot tall Miscanthus is definitely going to be in the appreciated box.
Yeah, I think so, but you know, it doesn't mean to say that I don't like some of the smaller grasses, because I think if they're used judiciously and in the right place. I mean, for instance, Festuca, glauca, and all the little blue sacks or whatever they're called. You know, there's lovely little blue grasses. I think probably I've been put off them by them being used in municipal plantings a little bit. And I think, you know, that if I saw them used in a way that pleases me, I would love them. But
I think some of the Pennisetums are quite nice, aren't they, Al? Some of the compact Pennisetums you can get away with. Things like Hameln and Red Rooster and Black Beauty, which tend to keep really good form, don't they?
Yeah, Little Bunny's another one.
Yeah, there we are. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got grasses in there. I always put my hand up and say I'm a big grass fan. What else have you got in your show and tell?
Well, I've got something which is going to be putting on fantastic colour through the winter, and this is one that you may have had before on here, and Al knows it. It's a lovely Cornus called Annie's Winter Orange, which is just, I think, one of the most loveliest of Cornus for the winter. But what it is doing now, and this is on a plant, well, 3 plants at my folks' place that I planted, which are about sort of 3 foot in all directions, it's going the most wonderful autumn colour. What you can't pick out on here as well is that all these end leaves have got lovely hints of pink and orange in them as well. And I do find this time of year so very exciting, as you know, because I think it's that wonderful transition. We've still got things in flower like chrysanthemums, like neurines. We've still got fruits on things like viburnumopulus, calicarpa, bodineri. And then we've got this wonderful fiery colour that appears as well. And you know, in no other sort of season would you get all these colours to work together. I think I said that, but something to do with this autumn light, this autumn into winter light, it just works. And Annie's Winter Orange, I think, after growing it for 5 years or more now, I think it surpasses any other Cornus on the market in terms of its robustness, its strength of stem, its ability to be hard cut back annually, which I think is nice. And before I grew this, I would have said, well, you know, Midwinter Fire or Midwinter Flame, one of the Sericea ones, but they can appear to be a little bit weak. And I do wonder if there's still weaker forms that are about on the market. I think that's quite variable. I was listening to Al talk to Val Bourne on a previous one of these about Dahlia Murkii, and I think there's 1 or 2 different strains of this particular Cornus Midwinter Fire, Midwinter Flame going about as well. And it does tend to lack that strength of Annie's Winter Orange, doesn't it, Al?
Annie's Winter Orange is absolutely superb. If you like Midwinter Fire and Flame and all of those, Annie's Winter Orange is just like them, but on steroids. And it is a much, much more vigorous plant. And I think it looks absolutely stunning. I can't get enough of it. I really do think it's lovely, especially at this time of the year, of course. And going into the winter, it's going to get better. And just a reminder to everybody, if you're planting putting in plants with lovely coloured bark or winter stems, try and make sure that they're lit by the low rays of the sun. So if you want them, if your garden faces south, let's say, you want them on the eastern side of your garden. So as the sun comes round, it hits those stems and lights them up, because that's the real benefit of them.
That's an excellent point. I did that basically by chance. I put my cotinus, my smoke bush, where the evening sun just catches it, and it's just such an extra special effect.
Yeah, it does. It makes a deal of difference, actually.
I wish it had been planned, but it was just luck.
Pretended you were being terribly clever.
Ian's been repositioning his show and tell. So
I have been listening as well, but I've only got 3 more things to show you, and that's it, just 3 more. And one of them is, I talked about fruit this time of year, and this is a wonderful Sorbus, and there's a huge range of rowans for the garden. There really are, but this is Sorbus hufahensis, which has these wonderful, and it's not quite picking up on here, but these wonderful rich pink, cream and white suffused berries on at the moment, which are in wonderful clusters in abundance, and on a tree which has been out in a garden in Sal House for about 10 years now, and is no more than about 3 to 4 meters, which is relatively compact for a tree. Actually, that is what all the ratings will class as a small garden tree. Relatively small canopy, wonderful mahogany bark, fantastic autumn colour as well. But then once those actual leaflets have gone, and those leaf centre ribs as well. These berries are just cracking. I think they're lovely, and because they're that pink, they aren't instantly appealing to the birds. They'll go for the reds, the oranges, the yellows, then they'll go for pinks and purples and whites at a later date. So for me, it's a lovely tree, and there are lots of Rowans to choose from. I know Al's got quite a few at his place, but this is one that I've always been really a great fan of, just for its habit and its performance as well. So beautiful.
A friend of mine, Annie, had one at her gate outside, just at the end of her drive at a house in Bergapton where she used to live, and it had the most amazing plum-coloured berries on it.
Oh.
And I said to her one day when I was there, I said, well, what is the name of this, Annie? And she said, well, it's just a seedling I dug up in the garden.
Ah, lovely.
And so it just goes to show, you know, that I'm always banging on about grow a few plants from seed because you don't know what you're going to get. But really and truthfully, you can get something amazing. And if you grow a selection of plants like Sorbus or the mountain ashes, I mean, you could get various coloured berries, and it is absolutely lovely. And Ian's absolutely right. They go for the red ones first.
It amazes me though, you know, because the trees ranging up to sort of 7 or even 9 meters for some Sorbus, but you go right down to something like Sorbus reducta, which is that lovely little sort of scrubby alpine thing, which is a lovely little plant though. It has perfect leaves, flowers and berries, but only grows to about sort of a foot 18 inches tops in height. So it's a real whole range, a gamete of sizes in between. It's lovely.
Ian, could you be starting a new fashion or reviving an old one for something called a rockery? But we don't call it a rockery now. What should we call it today? Because I mean, crazy paving has become alternative paving. You know, to bring it into the 21st century, what should we call a rockery?
I don't know. They're like mini landscapes, aren't they? There's got to be something like that.
If we had aquascaping for aquariums, can we have alpinescaping or something like that?
Oh, yeah, very nice.
I think that sounds quite good, actually, alpinescaping.
I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
Well, I'm a sucker, whatever we call them, rockeries or alpinescapes. I think count me in. If I had space, I'd definitely have a little rockery, particularly at Botanic Gardens. I spent ages sort of poring over the rockery areas. They're fascinating.
They're
I'll
wonderful.
tell you one of the most marvelous things is if you go to, I mean, I remember going to the garden in the RHS garden in Devon, Rosemore, and they have a superb rockery there. But I mean, it's a rockery beyond scale. I mean, you know, you're standing at the bottom and you're looking at rocks 20 feet, 30 feet tall, and there's water tumbling down through it and everything else. So our idea of a rockery plant is probably something really quite small, but their idea of a rockery plant is something quite large. But it fits in with the scale of the landscape, and that was absolutely marvelous. I did envy them the little cascades and the streams and all the rest of it that was going through this wonderful rockery. And of course, the ferns down in Devon that we grow in the east of England, they are 3 times as big because they have 60 inches of rain a year.
Well, don't you think, seeing as your fruit cage is palatial and your walled garden is quite sizable, and pretty much everything done at East Ruston Old Vicarage is done on a slightly larger scale than normal, you should have a pretty epic alpinescape, I think.
No, I don't want one because I think there comes a time when you have to garden with what you've got, and that would be going against everything that we haven't got to get that kind of rock garden in place, because, you know, it's just too much of a change in the landscape that we have. We're on a relatively flat site, and to suddenly install huge rocks and ravines and valleys and all that kind of thing would be slightly silly, I think, and it wouldn't go with the surrounding landscape. So maybe I'll just do a kind of alpine, what do we call it?
Alpinescape.
Alpinescape. We could do it on the flat.
Yes.
Or gently undulating.
Yeah, but you also do that really well in troughs, don't you? Because you
Yeah.
put wonderful little bits, you put wonderful blocks of tufa and other things in. And they always remind me of something you would see in a, you know, like almost a bonsai growing out of them, a scene from almost like a Japanese garden. And for me, then those bits of tufa then become these huge mountain ranges that run their way through your alpine troughs. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's like the gardening version of dolls' houses or something.
Yeah.
Right, Ian, what's up next?
2 more things. A lovely Ligustrum, which I picked up from Great Dixter many, many years ago when I went to their plant fair, and they have it listed, and it's Ligustrum, one called Lemon and Lime Tea Clipper, which I think is just a brilliant name. I absolutely love it. And it's been in a sunny border at Mum and Dad's place for about 10 years now. And I finally gave it a prune yesterday when I was around there doing some bits, and it was only about 6 feet in 10 years, which is absolutely lovely. And what you can see is, I love the habit of it for starters, that lovely almost herringbone look, a bit like you get with Cotoneaster horizontalis. Good green foliage at the base, but all the new growth comes out that lovely, lovely yellow with flecks of green and a bit of pink in there as well. And it really is just a lovely plant, which will keep 95% of its leaf through the winter as well, which is really good. Now, that other 5% gets lost if we get a really, really cold winter. It will suddenly just shed a bit, but 95% is kept. And I just think it's just a lovely foliage thing. And I've combined it in the border with my final show and tell, which is a plant here called Lophomertus, which I don't know if many people grow. Al's got it, I think, in the New Zealand garden at his, but it's a plant called Lophomertus ralphii, and the cultivar is Catherine. And it's got this wonderful, rich, plummy, coloured leaf to it. And I've got these two together in that bed. And I think that contrast of that sort of plummy aubergine colour with the yellow, I just love it, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I can see you put the two together, and it's sort of rather obvious that they're going to make a fantastic pairing. I've got Ligustrum lemon and lime, and I had it planted in a little bit of a shady area, and of course it was very lime and not very lemon, shall we say? So it's more green than yellow. And then Fiona came round, Fiona Black, a friend of mine. She wanted some foliage for something or other, and I said, "No, cut this down. I'll move it or something," because it's not doing what it should do. So I cut it very hard back 2 years ago, and this year it has grown enormously, and it's now getting its branches into the sun, and we're getting the lovely golden highlights on the top, which is what it should have.
It's just lovely, isn't it? A really good doer. I mean, you know, it's a really good thing. There's a whole range of good Ligustrums.
The shape form of the leaf is not like an ordinary privet.
No.
I mean, Ligustrums are privets, aren't they? And I mean, this is not like an ordinary privet. It's more like probably a pittosporum in the leaf, because the leaves are slightly undulating. They're much smaller, much daintier, and the branches almost have a wishbone effect on them, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, they are really good. There's a good range of Ligustrums, isn't there? There's Ligustrum lucidum. Is it Tricolor that you grow in and you coppice back every few years? That's really lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other one that I quite like was one that Christopher Lloyd used to grow, which is called Kihui.
Oh yes, that's a nice one.
Kihui has typical privet flowers. I mean, much like a small lilac, but in Kihui they're much, much bigger, and they're cream, and they flower in July, and that's a time when lots of shrubs have finished. They're not. You don't get that many shrubs that flower from midsummer onwards, do you?
No, it's a good time of year to get some extra colour. But yeah, this Lophomertus, if you haven't got it, well worth growing. Evergreen, or ever purple, I should say, and it's survived very, very cold winters. And I think it clipped quite well if you wanted to. So I think it clipped quite nicely. But I just love it. It's a cracking thing. And that's me show and tell for today. So not a lot, but just a few good bits that are putting that transition between autumn into winter. Because when we get into winter, it gets even more exciting. So you know.
It's interesting because Alan was talking about the lemon and lime and the difference with being in the sun. With that plant, is its sort of purpley coloured foliage affected if you were to put it more in the shade or the sun?
Yeah, a lot of those pigments will be affected by light levels, so it's quite important they get the full sun in order to produce I think it would be the carotenoids. Yeah, probably carotenoids, which will help do that as well. But there are certain hormones in and chemicals in, which are always in the leaf anyway. But if you have them in a shady spot, then the chlorophyll tends to come to the front. So they go green because the plant pushes the chlorophyll further forward so it can obviously absorb the maximum amount of light. And then when it's in sunlight, that gets recessed and those other pigments come through. But yeah, it's really important. As I said with the tea clipper, really important. The same with the Lophomertus as well.
That makes so much sense. No one's explained it to me like that. Thank you, Ian.
Okay.
Also, you said that, you know, winter is very exciting. One of the reasons it's exciting is because it's going to be Christmas.
Great.
And we thought we would do a nod to that by discussing some of our ideas for Christmas presents, particularly if you were looking for something a bit different or something on a budget. It's not necessarily been the best year for many of us financially. So with that in mind, what did you two want to bring to the table for Christmas ideas?
Well, I think an awful lot of us, because we've had shutdown and we don't know yet quite how much time we're going to have or even if we want to go out and do shopping and things. So I think an awful lot of our shopping is going to be done online this year, perhaps. And I mean, my shopping list is everything that you can buy online, really. But I just do you want me to run through or just do one?
Do one in case you steal all of Ian's ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, very good point.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you something. The perils of buying online are several. And sometimes, unless you check the size of something, you don't quite know what you're going to get. Now, I went on a wonderful site that Ian loves. They specialize in Japanese hand tools and pruning things and all the rest of it. And I bought this brush. In actual fact, I bought 3 of them because I thought they were going to be able to, I was going to be able, you got it as well. I don't believe this. I thought I was going to be able to use this to brush the cinders in the hearth with,
I thought that as well.
There it is, beautifully crafted with copper wires around it here, and it's got 4 little tufts on it, and it's got that lovely slanting shape, and it's absolutely beautiful. But I don't know what to use it for. Oh, hold on, yes it is.
Oh yeah, brilliant idea.
So essentially, something that online would look like it's a big witch's broom type brush is actually about the size of your hand.
Well, I don't know what, I can't think what they do. Can you remember what the suggested use for this is?
I think it was for cleaning down sort of pot rims and things and brushing down little hand tools and things afterwards. But yeah, I think it's quite a nice thing though, because it's made from Trachycarpus, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So I mean, we liked it because of that, didn't we? And we you know, we do love anything. We like magpies for stuff like this, aren't we, Al?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I've got one of those, so have I. Anyway, back to presents. I'm going to start off by saying vouchers for plants because, you know, if you give somebody a voucher, they can then buy what they want with it. But I mean, if you go to a garden centre or you get in touch with a garden centre and say, I want to spend X amount to give as a Christmas present to somebody, just imagine the fun they can have going in, and they're going to get everything they're going to get is free because you've given them the money, and they can go to the garden centre and they can buy tools, or they can buy plants, or they can buy seeds. And I think that's quite important, actually, because there's been a huge resurgence in people just attending to their gardens, whether they're doing it just for the sheer joy of it, or to relieve stress, or to get them outside, or to get some exercise, or whatever it is. And it's a wonderful thing to do. And I think, you know, that's so my first thing is going to be a voucher, a plant voucher.
Nice.
Voucher. Never mind, a voucher.
I like that. So that's one down from Alan. Ian, what would you like to suggest?
Well, I mean, this comes from the same company that we got the small brushes from, but this is something I invested in about four years ago, and it's a little thing called a crane mate, and it does come from Japan, and it's a sort of silicon resin mineral block which you put, well, camellia oil is really the best thing you should put on, but any sort of even 3-in-1 will work. And I use this for cleaning all the grime and muck off my secateurs. Now I've got quite a few secateurs because it's not just me working in gardens, it's quite a few of us. And if I did count up, there's a shocking amount of pairs, and I'm notoriously bad for not being able to find them. And then I go, oh, I'm so fed up with this. I just go and buy more, which is really terrible, I know. But then the old ones turn up, so I've got quite a lot. But this crane mate is great. A little bit of oil on there. It's a little block, it's like an eraser, like a rubber type thing you'd use for pencil work, but it's brilliant, and it gets in all the nooks and crannies. It gets all the grime off the blades. I've had secateurs which I thought there's not anything doing with those, and I've used this on them, and they come up like brand new. It actually puts the shine back on them, and it's available from the same people we get the little brushes from, which I'm going to say, which is Newaki. I do use Jake for a lot of stuff, and it is absolutely brilliant. Really good, and I wouldn't be without it. The crane mate, a good investment for any gardener that's got nice secateurs, knives, shears, that sort of thing. Sorry, crane, C-R-E-A-N.
Oh, crane, C-R-E-A-N. I thought it was cremate. No,
don't be silly. No. Really good though. Really good.
That is brilliant. To go back to Alan's idea of getting people plants, and this idea of people growing things from seed, I thought giving seeds as a present is always a great idea. And I'm sure you both would suggest probably more exciting things than I. But if you were going for a real budget way to get some interesting things, and you pop onto the Chiltern website. I can't remember exactly what they call it, but it's something like their kind of mystery bundle, something like that. And you get the end of season, it sounds a bit rubbish, the end of season leftovers, but they take, because they like to sell, fresh seed, they take what they haven't sold and they bundle them up into little mystery bundles, and they cost something like £4 for 10 packs of seed, which if you're on a real budget and you want to be able to give 10 packs of seed, that could easily cost you £25. So this is a way of getting a really nice mix of things. And I bought one of these last year and ended up with a pack of seed for the strawberry tree, for a wonderful little Alonzoa that I've grown and loved this year. And I wouldn't have grown it if I hadn't got it in the little mystery bundle. So it's a great way of actually buying. I got a great Antirrhinum in there, Appleblossom. A great way of getting hold of some things you might not have thought of trying if you want to buy yourself a present. But actually, it's a good way of getting hold of quite a lot of nice packaged up seed from a really reputable company, but for not very much money. So I wanted to put that out there because I really enjoyed my little mystery bundle when I bought it.
And I think that the thing that you touched on there is the fact that mystery bundles, even if you don't buy them from, as a mystery bundle, but if you're buying seeds for somebody, bung in a packet of something that they don't grow.
Yes.
Because that's the fun of sort of getting them to try something new. They might not like it, but they just might.
I've done that in the past for vegetable seeds and things as well, is that some of the seed merchants, because they've got quite a lot of history, they do these wonderful little tins, lovely sort of vintage styled metal tins, and you get maybe 20 odd packets in there. That's a lovely thing to do for somebody because you get a really good range of seed and also you get a really nice vintage tin. And every gardener in a shed needs tins because you've always got no need to keep seed in them, but it might be string, it might be plant labels, all those little bits and pieces. And it's just a nice little thing to have.
I tell you what, tins are ideal for keeping small things in that either go rusty or get damp or something like that. Because if you're in a greenhouse or the potting shed, the atmosphere, the air in there is invariably damp because it's got potting soil in it and it's got all the things, that we have in there. But I mean, it's an ideal place for putting. I mean, I've got a machine, you've got one, Thordis, because I gave it to you, that does stapling. Well, it stops the staples from going rusty and that sort of thing. And you can always lay your hands on them too.
The idea actually of somebody giving me a kit they'd made of like little envelopes. I bought Alan some. They're actually, I think they're like lunch money envelopes or something, but they're perfect for storing seeds in. But somebody just giving me an old biscuit tin with some little envelopes in and some plant labels and a good pencil to write on the plant labels.
Ball of string,
all of those little things in a little tin would be a really thoughtful present that I would love.
And the other thing I think is very nice is short pencils, nice little short stubby pencils, because they can always go in a tin and you've got something to write on the labels with. It's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Plant labels.
Yeah, of course, with seeds as well, if you've got some of those little envelopes, I quite like the idea of giving some of your home collected seed to your friends, especially if it's something like we were just talking about in your own garden, things cross and you don't know what you're going to get. I love the idea of being able to pass that home collected seed on.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually.
Oh, I had one.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen very often.
But if you get things like you get interesting dahlias might hybridize, and you've had a particularly good dahlia or something, you're not necessarily going to get that same one. But if it's been a particularly good plant, you think, oh, actually, that's quite nice. Envelopes of dahlia seed is fantastic because what are you going to get? Any combination of colours and foliage and structure. It's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah. Cost effective and really thoughtful. I like that. Alan, would you like to add any other Christmas presents to the list?
Oh, I've got several, yes. I'm trying to sort of go for the things that are probably not quite so obvious. And I was just sort of thinking, if you've got, hopefully by the end of the winter and the coming season, we will get to be able to visit gardens and all those sort of things that we've been severely denied. But of course, gardens are some of the safest places to be outside, and especially if you go to a large botanic garden or whatever. So I'm going to suggest that, and this is really for people that have probably just started to get into gardening. And they're opening their eyes and they're probably seeing plants, they're seeing the way cultivation is done and all the rest of it with much greater clarity than they ever have before. So I would suggest get tickets to a garden that's open to the public, or even a season ticket. If you can run to it, get a season ticket. Then they're phenomenal value, because the season ticket means that you can go as often as you like when that garden is open. And if you give that to somebody, they can, just enjoy the whole, bring them into the gardening world, if you like. And I think that would be a very nice present. That's one that I would love, actually.
Great way of supporting that garden as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So to your present list, Ian, what have you got next?
Well, I love books. I mean, I really do love books. I've had to get rid of some over the years, but I do love books. And two books that I return to time and time again are, I think, great additions for Christmases. One is the new updated version of Plant Names Simplified, which is a book which I had when I was at college 20 or more years ago. And it's been redone, and it really is a great go-to book because it tells you all the origins of the plant names and where they come from in terms of their meanings, in terms of whether it's Greek or Latin. It tells you about their species, and it's something which I always love to delve into with a plant. And I think particularly if you're new to gardening as well, new to gardening or horticulture as a career, I think it's really important to get to know those plants, the genus, the species, the cultivar, and then when you get in your psyche a bit about what those key sort of particularly species and cultivars are, it really helps you understand more about the plants themselves. This is one that I go to time and time again, and I'm a sucker for an old garden book, as you know, and one book which I read about 20 years ago and keep rereading is We Made a Garden by Marjorie Fish. Now, I don't think people would say, well, it's a book that's been out for years, how is that still relevant? Well, it's relevant because of the processes that they go through in order to create the garden. All that's still relevant in terms of aspect, soil, the slight disagreements they have over which plants are going to be best and whether too much money's been spent on the garden, but generally about the way plants work and the way they're put together. And this is an old black and white copy, but I return to it time and time again. I think you'll agree, Al, it's a cracking read. It really is good for new gardeners.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. And it's not just for gardeners either, because it has a kind of autobiographical feel about it. Because, I mean, Marjorie Fish, she was a secretary to somebody called Walter, who she eventually married. And they didn't get married until their later years, shall we say. And when they moved in together down in Somerset, I think it was, where her garden was, they constantly fought like cat and dog because he loved big, blousy dahlias and she hated them. And she was much more of the opinion that she wanted species plants in her garden. So, I mean, there was his bit and her bit, really. And there's something that I remember, I've got one of her books, and she's a photograph of her standing in a doorway with a huge armful of Schizostylus, which is now called Hesperantha, the red flowered form. And she'd obviously cut them and she was going to take them to the church or to her house or whatever, into her house or whatever. And I just think, that it's so evocative. The days of knocking on somebody's door if you saw a plant when you were walking through a village that you liked and you said, could I have a piece of that, please? And they'd either tell you to off or they would say, yes, of course. Do you have a trowel? Well, I happen to have one about me in my reticule. Yes. And it just brings back that lovely sort of feeling of nostalgia in the days of I don't know. It was it's just a lovely. It gives you a warm feeling, I think, the way people used to live.
You just reminded me of a time somebody did that with my parents. We were in the front garden, my mum and I, and someone went past. That's a lovely verbascum. Would you mind if I took a root cutting? And then the process of them sort of trying to dig a part of our plant out of the garden was slightly traumatic, but it was still nice that we could kind of offer them a bit of verbascum root. Nice, no idea whether it took.
But I was thinking, a little bundle of old secondhand gardening books would be a lovely gift for somebody if you knew they were a really keen gardener. There's a lot of great shops about, and particularly when things get back a bit to normal, and bookshops and charity shops, just 3 or 4 little books. I was thinking, bit of old twine, just tie them up, bit of brown paper, really simple, but that would be a lovely thing because there's so much relevant information and good tips in these old tomes, even though techniques are changing. Some of the old stuff, there's that stuff that never changes, that every gardener needs to know. And I think you get that from these old material.
And also you get it occasionally in a new book, because there is a new book out by somebody called Tamsin Westhorpe. She gardens in Herefordshire. She used to be editor of the English Garden. And she works full time in this garden that's been in her family for 100 years. And it's I've just started reading it. Graham read a review of it the other day and thought it sounded really good in the review. He thought that I'd like it, so he bought it for me, and I've just started reading it. And it is very much like, but it's a hands-on gardener in a country garden that talks you through the way you do things. And, you know, even if she says, you know, on hot days, I'm out there in winter in February and I've got every piece of garment on, I can hardly bend over because I've got so many layers. And yet, you know, out in July, I've got nothing on but a bra on my top, on top, and a pair of shorts. But it's just encompassing of how you actually manage a garden. It, you know, for instance, something that I've got to do this, Ian, because she talks about in February of cutting down coppicing hazel and using the hazels for sweet peas and, you know, propping up plants and supports and all the rest of it. And I mean, you know the garden at East Rusney, and you know that we've got hazels galore that could probably do with a bit of a coppicing. So I I feel a coppicing coming on.
Good. I think that's lovely. And I like any book that's sort of like a gardener's year. If I could read a book by Fergus Garrett just writing about sort of weekly things they do at Great Dixter, or, you know, any of the large well-known gardens, I think that's a lovely thing, just to follow that gardening year through and never get bored of it, because although everything's cyclical and some things are the same, every garden is slightly different in the way they do things. Like at Alan's this time of year, we're lifting out exotics and, you know, tender bananas and tibercinas, and, you know, maybe another garden they might just be cutting back dahlias or starting to get the borders mulched. So every garden has their slightly different quirks, and I think that's really, really good.
And every gardener has the different quirks as well. Like Tamsin mentioned cutting down hazels, and I mean, I know all about that, but I'd forgotten about it, and we don't do it, so I didn't think about it. But now I've thought about it, and I'm going to do it. So, you know, it's worth it for all those little gems that you pick out. Lovely.
Well, because actually, you know, talk about hazel, all the basal stuff that's really too thick will make fantastic stakes for using through dahlia borders, for example. And all the whippy, twiggy stuff at the top can be used for rows for peas in the veg garden. And the rods in between can be used for frames for sweet peas or wigwams for climbing beans. So it's such a versatile thing, isn't it?
Exactly. And it looks good and it's natural.
Also, if you're looking for inspiration and just that kind of eye candy, you can get some wonderful books that are full of great plants. I know I can't remember the title of it, but I used to have a book that was all members of the Gardener's Question Time panel and their kind of must-have plants all assembled into one book. Obviously, there are plenty of plant encyclopedias, and just to be able to leaf through and look at these plants, particularly if it's something where people have put their personal opinion on it, basically like this podcast in a book, people talking about the plants they love and why they like them and why they think you should grow them. That's always fun on a horrible winter evening to be able to sit there and dream about what you can put in your garden when the weather's nice.
Yeah, lovely, really nice.
Super. Any more Christmas ideas?
Well, I said to Ian the other day, he said to me, what would you like for Christmas? And I said, yes, I have come up with an idea. And again, it's back to Niwaki and Jake Hobson, I'm afraid, because there's a wonderful tool called a hori. Is it a hori?
Hori, yeah.
Or hori. And it is a wonderful tool. Now, this is the kind of tool I think you probably have to be careful with, because it looks vicious. It's like a thick knife, and it's got serrations down one edge. It comes with a holster. You keep it on your hip. But it is one of those multifarious tools that you can use for so many different things. And I mean, Ian very kindly bought Graham one, and he uses it in the desert for rooting out in between the spiky old agabes. And I just thought, that looks rather interesting. I think I could do with one of those as well. So I think,
good.
you know, good garden tools are quite something. I remember, Thunder, you and I were at the Chelsea Flower Show some time ago, and we went past a wonderful tool manufacturer from Holland called Schneebor. And the man, I can't remember his name, who Ian loves them, look. and the man from Schneebor, he actually said to us, talking about his tools, he said, I'll guarantee them for 100 years. And I said to him, how the hell can you do that? He said, I don't care, because I'm not going to be here, am I?
Stuff is good.
I mean, that I think in actual fact you could almost say yes, they would be good for 100 years because they have such superb quality. Now I'm going to tell you something else. They are expensive. So if you want to buy a present for somebody who's very special in your life, I mean, you know, Schneeber tools is the way to go, but I mean, they are superb tools. They use them at Great Dixter. They have a shop of them at Great Dixter in Sussex. So that says it all. If they're good enough for them, they're good enough for any gardener anywhere.
Wow. Just someone you love a lot.
Yes.
Any more before we do some FLOMO?
Can I just quickly do one?
Yeah.
It's just simply, it's a good knife, a good gardening knife.
Oh,
should
yes.
never be sneezed at. And I do like the Opinel knives, come in a huge range of colours as well, so you don't have to lose them. But a good knife, I use this for cuttings, I use it for string, I use it for slicing. If I want to just, whip dead heads off roses, if I'm nipping around else somewhere, it's quite good with a good tough thumb. I can just nip rose heads off if I need to. It's a really good thing, and it's just a handy thing to have in your pocket. Opening bags of compost, it's inevitable. But I know it's a bit of like, oh, everyone's got a good knife, but a good gardening knife like this, well made, will last you a lifetime. A brilliant thing to have.
And something else you just reminded me of, Ian, and that is second-hand tools, because quite often you'll buy second-hand tools. There you are. And here's one I had earlier. But second-hand tools, and probably, dare I say, slightly better made than they are are today.
Yeah, look at them. Yeah.
You see, I mean, they really are quite lovely. But one thing I discovered this summer was we have Andrew and Christine who come to the garden, and they restore old tools and they put them up for sale in our garden, and they have a little stand there with them on. And there was something I thought, well, that would make a marvelous tamp. You know, when you're filling a seed box with compost and you want to level it down, tamp it down, and it was a plasterer's float. You know, you've got that wooden float, you just plaster, swing the plaster about on the wall, but you can actually use it for tamping down the compost in a seed tray. And the great thing was, it was as cheap as chips.
Actually, I mean, you love old tools. I know you also love old pots. I think if you can have any old terracotta pots and you don't like them, I think good old terracotta pots. I got given these.
Just look how delightful they look, though. Look.
Yeah, I got given these by someone who just doesn't like them. So if you have got old terracotta pots and they're not to your liking, the chances are someone will want them.
That's Sorbus for you, by the way.
To me.
I was thinking as well, when I said about old tools, I read an article about, sort of buying old tools and things, and not once did they mention about the quality. They went, oh, it harks back to a beautiful time of gardening, and it's nice to use old things. Not once did they hark back to the fact that the quality of these will surpass anything else you get. And for a good trowel like this, which is skeleton, nice good old variety, this was £10, and I don't think that's an expensive gift at all for the good gardener in your life. And it's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing to have, and it'll just get better with age. It really will.
Much like your good self.
Thank you, dear boy.
What tools do you think you have, Ian, of the vintage variety?
Not as many as Alan. That's all I'm going to say. But a lot. I have got a shipping container that's got quite a lot in. But I mean, if I've got them and I'm looking after them, they're not going to get rusty and rotty and move out of the way. Oh, hello, Gigi.
Oh,
hello, Gigi.
Gigi, the gorgeous spaniel, has come to join proceedings.
Oh, hello.
Sleepy puppies who've been out playing in the garden.
She's just woken up.
Right, so let's do some FLOMO. So any plant that you're having a bit of FOMO about, something you've seen and you just wish you were growing and it's heading to the top of your gardening wish list. Mine was inspired by Mr. Alan Gray, who posted
well, what do you know?
to possibly his Twitter or his Instagram an amazing bit of autumn colour. A plant that was just ablaze with fiery foliage. And I immediately screenshot it and sent it to him and said, what is this? I need this. And it was Acer October Glory, I think I'm right in saying.
You are right. Yeah. I think it may be German, because it October is spelled Oktober. And the funny thing is that although it's called October Glory, it is really a November glory, because it doesn't colour up until mid-November. And this year it's a little bit later than it is normally, I think. But it is a superb plant, but it's a big plant.
Yeah. One for my future garden, perhaps.
Well, I think when you get your rolling country estate, you'll be able to have one or 7.
But yeah, it's a real showstopper. I mean, obviously there's plenty of plants like that at East Ruston Vicarage, but I just saw that fly by on social media and thought, wow, put that on the list.
Well, going back to something that Ian said earlier about autumn colour and things, the strange thing is you wait days and days and days for this autumn colour to appear, but you must enjoy it while it's there because it is fleeting. Yeah. Because if we suddenly get a wind or a sharp frost, all those leaves will drop and it's gone. So enjoy it while it's there. Yeah,
we're just now getting to that slightly more skeletal stage of the season where the leaves are blowing away and we're getting a bit more bleak. And
well, you've noticed I've lost weight.
I'm about the only person on this podcast who hasn't. It's very annoying. Moving on, Ian, what's your FLOMO?
Mine's a tree actually as well, and it's really odd. It's a birch that I was reading an article in, I think, an old Plantsman or somewhere like that, and it's a birch called bowling green. And there's a lot of good birch cultivars, I know, and we all know Jack Montii, but this birch bowling green has the most wonderful, rich red mahogany Roofe bark on it, and there was just so much. All the new growth, all the new sort of younger stems are almost sort of like peach and apricot, and then as it ages it gets this wonderful and rich. And I may have actually seen it as well at Allen's at some point. Graham may well be growing it out at Allen's somewhere, but I just saw it in this article and it was glowing and it was just lovely. And I'm a big fan of birches anyway, and one which is still on my wish list that I haven't got is Betula albosinensis septentrionalis, which I saw in the winter garden at Cambridge Botanics against actually a finely clipped Leylandii hedge, dark green Leylandii hedge. But not knowing much about winter plants when I was first starting out in horticulture when I was a young student, to get taken to this garden and everything was planted for winter. When I was a student, winter was the time the garden got put to bed. But no, at Cambridge Botanics and other places now, winter is another fantastic season where everything just looks at the colour of stems, of flowers, of daphnes. But these birch just really shone out to me. So I've still got that septentrionalis on the list to get, but bowling green, that's also on the list now.
I think the very interesting thing about winter gardens is that you can have a winter garden if your garden is big enough, or if you're just living in your house during the winter, for instance. I mean, some people do that. They live one side of the world and then the other side of the world in different seasons. But if you've got one area where you can concentrate all that winter, I mean, think evergreen leaves, we'll talk about various coloured barks, various coloured berries, and we can slightly go over and in and out of the season as late autumn to early spring, if you like. And you think about the colours of Hameln flowers and things like that. Underplantings of winter flowering, little early flowering things like cyclamen and various other plants as well. It is absolutely stunning, but I'm not saying you want it all the while, but actually I think it's well worth a look. People going to visit, I mean, for instance, Cambridge Botanic Garden has the most fantastic winter garden. Anglesey Abbey has a winter walk, I know, which they open in snowdrop time. And it is a lovely thing to actually go and see. My FLOMO is, well, a large shrub or a small tree.
It's all very tree-tastic today.
Well, yeah, just to keep in the flow of things. But it is something I saw on a, somebody very kindly today or yesterday sent me an email saying they'd read a newspaper article that I'd written and there was a wish list in there. And she said, oh, perhaps you might like to go to this nursery because they have the kind of things that you like. And whilst looking at this nursery this morning, I found Daphne Bolua, Mary Rose.
Oh, yes, no.
You know it.
I heard of it last year and was tracking it down, trying to find it for you. But didn't have much luck. And then the season moved on and of course it went, oh, but yes, no, that's a lovely thing.
Yeah, Daphne Bolua, Mary Rose. Well, let's take Daphne Bolua for a start. Daphne Bolua is one of those wonderful plants that came to us from the Himalayas or the Himalayas. And it's a winter flowering shrub. Ours, Daphne Bolua, there's several name forms, but they start flowering around about Christmas time, sometimes a little bit before, go right the way through until March, even into April. And they have these wonderful little 4-petal flowers held in bunches that open and emit the most fantastic, great gusts of scent. In actual fact, we've got several different varieties, and Ian was planting them around the house the other day. So that, I mean, hopefully in a couple of years' time, our whole garden around the house, fingers crossed, will be enveloped in this cloud of perfume. But back to my FLOMO, Daphne Belua Mary Rose has exceptionally dark pinky purple flowers. Now, normally these are sort of kind of wishy-washy pinky flowers, although there are several that are white flowered, which I think are rather nice as well, which we have several of in the garden. Some of them we grew from seed, in actual fact, and they were completely accidental, which is another good reason for growing plants from seed, because you don't know what you're going to get. But Mary Rose is a lovely dark form, and I have tracked it down, and I just hope that, I mean, they're not inexpensive. In actual fact, they're damned expensive. But, you know, if you want them and you can afford them, then you've got to pay for them. They're rare things.
What a wonderful thing. Well, it looks like, Ian, you unfortunately won't be able to buy that for Alan now. He's pipped you to the post.
That's fine. That's okay.
It's funny, actually, you were mentioning Anglesey Abbey. I was literally just walking the dog outside Anglesey Abbey about an hour ago.
Really?
Yes.
How far are you?
Very close.
Oh, right.
I had to drive there to walk the dog, so it's not like outside my window, but it's and it was very busy. I didn't get to go in because they are not dog friendly. That's worth knowing. If you want to take your dog will have to stay in the car. But it is wonderful. I've been there at winter time, and it's wonderful, as is the botanics, as you mentioned, which is also not very far from me, the Cambridge University Botanic Garden. And also, talking about winter interest, I seem to remember us recording a bit of a series on this a few years ago. So if people search the Get Gardening YouTube channel, I think we've got Barking Mad and Very, Very Nice, maybe. Ian peering from behind a clipped you talking about getting naked in winter. So you could go and check those out. While you're locked down and probably unable to visit as many gardens as you'd like, you can maybe look for a bit of inspiration there.
Good idea.
Lovely stuff. I think with all of that show and tell and Christmas presents and FLOMO, we have wound up this week's edition of the podcast, and I think the puppies are waking up, aren't they, Alan?
Oh, they are, yes.
Following her walk nearby Anglesey, my dog is completely sprawled out on the sofa, so she's out for the count for the rest of the night, I think. Thank you, you lovely fellas.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. All the best. Lovely to see you all. Bye-bye.
Happy gardening. Bye.
You too. Bye. Happy gardening, everybody.
Do you have the option of video? But
it's strange, it's always worked up until now. Oh,
he's not on his laptop, Ian.
Well, that's why. Why is he on his laptop? He's always on his laptop. Tell him he's a plum. Oh, Lily.
She's come to see what's going on because it's funny.
Really bad. Hello. Here he is. Here he is. Yes. Yes!
Now I've lost Ian.